Oh man, I haven't been this nervous making a video in a very long time. And I am a little nervous today because I'm going to be talking about how to break down accents for use at the Dungeons and Dragons table. Yes, today I'm going to be jumping into the deep end with D&D accents and demonstrating a few techniques that I like to use when working on my library of accents. Now, the reason I'm nervous is because by the nature of the subject, I have to do some of these accents for you all here, and I kind of sort of have to treat today's video like I'm an expert. But simply put, I'm not an expert on dialects and accents. But with that said, I do think I'm pretty decent at them, and I think I've got some really great methods for helping to break down the learning process for you. It's kind of like your high school football coach, right? They almost certainly never played professionally, but that doesn't mean that they can't help you be a little bit better. Okay, so today's video is gonna be aimed in a way. I'm gonna aim my video today in two ways. At Americans who make up the largest part of my audience, and I'm going to aim my goal today to focus on accents from the UK. Now, that means that this is the part of the video that I apologize to all of my viewers from across the pond. I'm sorry ahead of time for what's about to happen in this video. And by the way, if you haven't checked out the first D&D characters voices video, link is in the description box below. I highly recommend you stop this video and go watch that one first because it talks about building out our foundation for voices. Okay, accents. The first thing that a lot of Americans don't know is just how many different accents exist in the UK. And for me, understanding a bit of the basics and where these things come from helps me to break them down with each of their individual characteristics and regional sounds. The state of Texas, where I am from, is over 268,000 square miles and has maybe 4 or so accents and really only one dialect, aka the way we choose to say things. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is a mere 93,000 square miles, yes, over 2.5 times smaller than just my state, and yet has close to 40 different accents with just as many dialects. So, when you're trying to learn a new accent, saying Scottish or English doesn't really mean anything. To have something more consistent, you really should be aiming a bit more specific than that. But remember, everything we're doing here isn't for the telly, all right? It's for use at the D&D table. So let's narrow that down a bit and look at just a handful of accents that I think are the easiest for Americans to learn with RP or received pronunciation, Scottish, Irish, Cockney, and West Country. Yeah, now, yes, of course, I know Scottish and Irish aren't specific enough, and I'm well aware that those each have sub-accents, but we're moving on anyway. All right, now that we have a few targets that we want to begin to practice, the next question is how do we break those down? Well, the first thing I want you to focus on is a few letters in the alphabet, the first of which is the letter T. The letter T is one of the biggest defining keys for learning a new accent, and it's the best starting place, in my opinion, because it is both easy to start with and because it is so distinctive in its difference between these accents. What I want you to do is to start with the word bottle and little. Now, you can hear in my American accent just how rounded those sound there. Bottle, little, a little bottle. The American accent rounds those sounds off to the point that they sound not like the letter T, but rather the letter D, bottle, little. But in our UK accents, that rounded T doesn't really exist. Instead, you get two different T sounds. The first is the pronounced T, and then we have the glottal T. So the pronounced T is something you would hear in RP, which is the posh English for my American friends, and you would end up with bottle, little, a little bottle. American would be bottle, little. RP would be bottle, little. Next, we have the glottal T. The best way to describe this would be as though the T's don't exist and instead are choked off. This is something we find in Cockney and in Scottish. Bottle, little, a little bottle. After that, the next letter we want to spend our time practicing is the letter R. Now, in the American accent, we have what is called the rhotic R. Well, I should say that the majority of American accents have the rhotic R, but there are actually a few that don't. And the rhotic R is that hard R sound that sounds like a pirate, whereas the vast majority of UK accents don't include the rhotic R, with two big exceptions, the West Country and Irish accents. So let's look at a few examples of what I mean. We'll start with the American accents with and without the rhotic R. In Texas, I would say good morning, or more likely just morning. And you can hear it right there. Morning, morning, morning. That's that rhotic R. Whereas a Southern Georgia accent and even people from Boston don't use the rhotic R. A Southerner might say good morning. A Southerner would say a good morning. And up in Boston, they would say, forget it, Bobby. We'll get it in the morning. The morning. Now, let's compare that to the UK and see how it stacks up with a couple of great practice words of far, bar, car, and tar. In my American accent, I would say car, far, bar, and tar. And in something like RP, they would say ka, fa, ba, ta, car, ka, bar, ba. So in American, you might say, I'm going to visit the farm. And in RP, that would be, I'm going to visit the farm. Cockney also uses this non-rhotic R, and you can hear it a lot whenever they say, I'm going to visit the farm. The farm. The farm. There's no real heavy R sound there, like a pirate or that rhotic R. Now, the West Country accent is best associated with Hagrid from Harry Potter, and even Sean Astin pulls inspiration from the West Country in the Lord of the Rings films, and they do in fact use that hard R or rhotic R. You're a wizard, Harry. Mr. Frodo. Irish accents will also use this rhotic R and would say something like, I'm going to visit the farm. I'm going to visit the farm. 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 That hard rhotic R. Now, Scottish is where things get a little more difficult because they use a rolled R. So here's the deal with me personally. Being from Texas, we share a 1,240-mile border with Mexico, and as such, we have a significant Mexican and Mexican-American population here. So naturally, I personally do speak a little bit of Spanish. Okay, so Spanish, let's pull out some fun sentences. Hola vecino, ¿cómo estás? ¿Me puede prestar su escalera por 15 o 20 minutos? Gracias, amigo. Yo necesito una mesa para 3 personas, por favor. Yo quiero una hamburguesa de queso sin tomate. I've actually wanted to pull out Spanish sometime in a video just for the complete surprise factor, but those are like the dumbest sentences I could think of. Sorry, guys. Because of this, I personally find the Scottish accent maybe a little easier than some others might, simply because the rolled R is something I've practiced before. And honestly, I don't think that the Scottish accent is hard to do, really. And even if you listen to someone like James McAvoy, who has a wonderful Scottish, you can hear a lot of the great Scottish R and tonality in his interviews. To practice this rolled R, try this. Say, por favor, por favor, por favor. Then start mixing in this sentence. A great Scottish accent isn't hard to do, really. This sentence will let you practice 3 R's all in different places within the words. We have great, 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 hard, 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 and really, really. And with even 5 minutes of practice, you'll start to gain familiarity with how to approach these rolled R's wherever they may appear in a word's structure. A great Scottish accent isn't hard to do, really. So now I have another practice phrase for you to help put both of these together, which is a little farm. So I'm gonna do my best to demonstrate these 5 different accents: American, Scottish, Irish, RP, and Cockney. A little farm, a little farm, a little farm, a little farm, a little farm. And now the last letter I want you guys to focus on is the letter L. Now there are all sorts of ways that the L can be tweaked from accent to accent here, but instead of trying to run through them all, we're just going to focus on the dropped L. This is sort of like the glottal use of T, but instead of clenching off the sound, we're going to allow this L to just kind of drift and fade away. This dropped L appears in all sorts of accents, from Scottish to Cockney to Essex. It's all over the place in the UK, and you can hear it here, maybe, in a really terrible attempt at Essex, which I suck at, but I'm gonna do anyways because I'm just here to have fun at this point. I called my friend Paul and I told him I need some money. But you can hear that dropped L in there with cold and Paul and toad. It's as though the L sound is replaced with an elongated vowel or even a soft W sound. Paul. And Cockney would say the same thing. Paul, Paul. Scottish would again say, I was quite surprised whenever I got the call. And you guys can hear that sort of fade and drift away. It's not call, it's call. Okay, so now let's shift to practice. Guys, if you are truly interested in working on an accent for your Dungeons and Dragons game, the #1 tip I would give you is to listen. Listen to these accents as much as you can. There simply isn't a replace for simply hearing it. One of the best things for my accents was discovering British panel shows like Would I Lie to You, Cats Does Countdown, and then of course my discovery of the greatest show ever created of all time ever, Taskmaster, which I definitely recommend. My elevator pitch would be to imagine if all of the UK comedians live in a small area of the country, thus allowing them to each run their own shows and have the others on as frequent guests. It would be like if Seth Rogen hosted a game show with Kevin Hart and Paul Rudd, and then Kevin had a show where Seth and Paul came on to compete, and so on. Panel shows are really great if you want to hear all kinds of accents and have a laugh without having to binge like a drama on Netflix or something. And this really weird thing will happen. At first, you probably won't be able to understand everything that they're saying. And I mean that. You'll find yourself just missing words from people that are speaking English, and then suddenly it'll be like a switch that gets flipped and you'll just start understanding everything. You'll be like Antonio Banderas in The 13th Warrior. It's a pretty crazy effect. So as you begin to practice, one thing to note is just how much overlap there is between these accents while still allowing them to all feel unique. With each of these characteristics, you're going to find that they often share 2 or 3 identifiers. But remember, guys, why we are using voices in the first place. Our goal is to immerse our players in the game world. That's all. And we don't want voices and accents to come at the cost of roleplay or story development. One tip I have when practicing and implementing accents as part of your DM voices is to go for it. Really lean into it and over-exaggerate it. As awful as it is to think about that Lucky Charms mascot, if practicing your Irish accent is easier for you by mimicking those commercials, do it. Because what happens is over your 3 to 4 hour game sessions is your voice will kind of overshoot and then tend to fall back some. So really go for it. Another tip is not to worry about mixing up your voices. Guess what? It's gonna happen. It's not a big deal. And the fear of your character voice starting quite Scottish and falling into Irish is not something you should worry about at all. Mixing and matching these voices is perfectly okay as well. Remember, there's no actual Scotland in your game. So if your character talks in a mixed and mashed version of Scottish and even Texan twang, that's perfectly okay. Don't let it stop you from doing accents so long as you're still having fun. Another great practice tip I have for you is aimed at players more than Dungeon Masters, and that's to give your character a surname that fits the regional accent you are attempting. Instead of naming your Scottish-influenced character from a name generator like Bruxto, give them a Scottish surname like MacLeod. That way you can practice introducing your character, and your brain will automatically begin to associate your speech pattern with that name. Practice catchphrases along with this introduction, and this is a great tool and method to bringing your character to life before a campaign. I did this constantly with my Good Aligned Death character, Bravilian. I am Bravilian Nikolai Viko. It is pleasure to make acquaintance, which was Russian or Eastern European influence. Obviously, in that example, I made up the surname Viko, but Nikolai is something that your ear has heard before in that accent, and as such, it becomes much easier to replicate and kind of get into that frame of speech pattern. Another little tool there, particularly with making the foreign accents more believable, is my exclusion of the word your in that sentence. The thing with linguistics is that they vary so widely in sentence composition that you can cheat by breaking up how a character speaks to make it more foreign, as though it is clear that English or common in your game world is in fact your character's second language. The word a and the in English are more great targets in this respect to cut out from time to time to make your character speak more herky-jerky. Would you like piece of bread? Instead of, would you like a piece of bread? Now, speaking of foreign accents, I'm just going to say, so long as you treat them with respect and without malice, it is perfectly okay to give your character a foreign accent. Accents are regional, not racial, period. If you have a dark-skinned man born in London, he's going to sound different than one born in Egypt. If you have a Korean man born in America's South, guess what? He sounds like this.
So when he's 16, he tried to apply for his driver's license. He didn't want them to think that JB stood for anything. On the application, he wrote J only, B only, Stewart. It came back Jonely, Bonely, Stewart.
And vice versa. If you take a pale-skinned man born in Singapore, he sounds like this.
So Tyler, how long have you lived in Singapore?
Singapore, 9 years already.
9 years, and then before that?
2 years in China, then some more, got 5 years in the States.
Oh, wow. Okay, did people treat you any differently, like, you know, wherever you went, because you spoke differently?
Of course, in local schools, only blonde person, hard to do anything, always stand out one. China, same thing. They call me 金发.
金发, golden hair.
Golden hair.
Can you speak Mandarin?
也可以.
Do you still use it these days to get stuff?
当然.
Now, if I wanted to imitate this white blonde kid's accent, is that automatically racist somehow? No. We're practically the same race. But the flip side of that coin is you can be a D-bag using foreign accents to mock and make fun of with your friend. So don't do that stuff. Simply put, don't be a dick. If you feel like working on a dark Japanese type accent for a new character you're excited to roleplay makes sense, and it's something that will help you really bring that character to life and explore them in your role-playing, then don't be afraid to go for it. As long as the reason you want to do it is for roleplay and not to slide in a bunch of racist stereotypes with your buddies. Remember, even with the Japanese-inspired accent, Japan doesn't exist in your D&D world. So I challenge you to find those places where you can change up the expectations culturally and take them in completely new directions. Then the final step in your accent practice will come from reverting back to the things we practiced from the first character voices video. And that is to start overlaying our accents with our pitch and speed foundation, and then putting it all together with pitch, speed, accent, and vocal characteristics. And with this, even mastering just a few of these accents, it will help you exponentially increase the amount of characters you will be able to bring to life at the D&D table. So of course, I can take an RP accent like this. Mostly what I'm doing is I'm over-enunciating and I'm bringing the front of my mouth quite in. And I kind of settle into this particular accent with this particular character. And then I can even take it down here and add a bit of a gruff tone to it. Now, this sounds like a completely second character, doesn't it? I'm telling you guys, it all begins to multiply. Pitch, speed, characteristics, and now accents overlaid. You're really gonna get a wide breadth of characters if you can even master one or two of these. And again, you don't have to do accents. This is a video about accents, but you don't have to do accents. And finally, the last thing I wanna talk about today has nothing to do with accents at all, which obviously needed a lot of today's video time. But the final piece of this puzzle is acting. Yes, when you start to add in acting to your character voices, you will see and feel your NPC discussions and roleplay scenes take on a completely new level of immersion for your group. Get excited, be somber, get angry, and work on your volume control. If you're at the table in person with your Dungeons & Dragons group, make eye contact with the player you're speaking to. If you're playing over Zoom, don't be afraid to look directly at your camera when you deliver your lines so your group feels like you are talking to them. Don't get distracted with what you're going to say next, and look at your fellow players' camera boxes when they reply. And the one tip I have here is to really try and focus a little extra on the happy, joking, and gleeful moments in character. Have your character laugh. This is something I love to see at the table because it shows me the player is immersed in the moment. It's easier to act sad in the sad moments. But having your character act joyful is something far fewer players try to do. And it's a really great way to stay in character. That's it. That's all I have for you guys on the basics of how I tackle D&D voices at the table. I really tried hard over these last two videos to break things down and really make it as approachable for anybody to do and try as possible. So I hope you guys were able to take something away from one of these two videos. Otherwise, I'm just talking to the ether. So hopefully I was able to help you guys along the path somehow. I want to know, what else you guys do. What are your go-to accents? I'll be honest with you, I've got a few accents I'm kind of starting to play with. Geordie is one. Essex I'm terrible at, but I'm starting to listen to more Essex speakers so I can try to pick up on a few of kind of cues and how they speak. Liverpool is another one that I'm kind of listening to, and Newcastle. Newcastle has a great accent. Bob Mortimer has a wonderful Newcastle accent, and so I'm listening to as much of that. And I'm working on those things, but I want to know what you guys are working on. Do you have go-to accents? Do you have accents that you've tried and failed miserably? For me, that's German and French. I don't even understand the basics of those. I've got to probably just do hours and hours of work before I'm able to add those to my library. So let me know in the comments down below what's going on your tables. I, of course, want to give a massive thank you to all the incredible patrons over at welcomeadventures.com. Guys, you're awesome, and I love you. That's all I have to say. You guys are awesome. If you guys like what I do here and you want to support more content like this, maybe pop in a one-on-one coaching session so we can talk about that puzzle you're working on for your next D&D game, check out welcomeadventures.com. It's a great way to support the channel and snag some rewards for yourself. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games, or maybe you're learning to love role-playing games as much as I do, I would love to have you subscribe. I'm putting out videos on GM tips, player tips, tutorials, and weird stuff just like this, kind of in that same ballpark. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, hit the subscribe button down below and come join us. Guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends who never laugh at your accents. I'll catch you guys next time.